right, are you guys ready for Top Gun Maverick? I know it's been out for a year. Hey, Mitch Taco Bell, I am your host for Tall Tales with Taco. And tonight we're talking to an old buddy of mine, Brian Ferg Ferguson. Now, Ferg is busy as all get out. And this is probably, we've been playing phone tag back and forth for a good while to get a little talk on the interview about his experience with Top Gun Maverick. And I'd like to welcome Ferg aboard because this is the first time our schedules were both airline guys. And with his reserve job and as an airline pilot, to try to mesh that to come talk, it's been a while. But I tell you what, now that the movie has been out for a while, I own my own DVD copy. It's on Amazon Prime now. It's on the every airplane ride. You can watch it on there. Now we can just kind of digest it and sit and shoot the bull about it. Hey, Ferg, welcome aboard, brother. How are you, man?
I'm glad this finally worked out. It was a long road to getting together with our schedules.
Yeah, I tell you what, every time, and then I felt bad yesterday. My dad had to get some surgery and pull a tooth out. And I'm like, I'm just not going to make it, man. Can we do it tomorrow? So thanks for your patience.
Absolutely.
I really do appreciate it. We were talking earlier, I got my wings in 91 and I am the product of Top Gun, the original movie. You're 10 years behind me on the wings. How old are you now though?
53.
53. So you were just a few years younger than me when the original movie came out. What effect did that have on you as a kid? I mean, obviously you became a fighter pilot, but was that the catalyst that shot you into being an aviator?
Yeah. So I didn't come from a family of aviators. My initial impetus was my dad had a friend with an airplane, and they took me out to the little local airport, flew around for an hour. I went, wow, this is amazing. This is magic and unbelievable. So I knew it was airplanes. But not having come from an airplane family, what's the path? What's the route? What do you do? So I just started building model airplanes and watching airplane movies and all the standard stuff that anybody can consume. And then between Top Gun coming out in '86 when I was in high school and going to a Blue Angel air show, those two, that locked it in. Fighter pilot, Navy, done. Which was fortunate for me because not every, I've got two teenagers in college right now.
Yeah.
They're finding their way, as most teenagers do. And usually, you're in your 20s before you go, what do I really want to do when I grow up? Not that I've grown up, but when I do, I still want to do what I do now, which is kind of a single focus. And it makes it, I wouldn't say easy. I mean, as you know, not easy to become somebody that wears wings of gold,
right.
But you have a focus and you have a path and a drive and a determination and you stick to that. Everything is achievable. So that was kind of my initial path was airplanes in general. Saw the movie, 100 times like everybody else. Had the jacket, not popular in high school, wearing the, Top Gun bomber jacket,
right.
But ultimately it worked out. So that was kind of the path from cradle to grave of what I'm doing.
See, what's funny is my uncle was an F-14 Rio with puking dogs. And my dad was an engineer on ships. So as a kid, we were stationed in Little Creek, and my uncle would drive over in his Porsche 911 with his Rusty as pilot, and they would come over to the house, have dinner. He played guitar, always had a good-looking girlfriend, Va Beach girl.
Yeah.
And as a kid, he had a Cherokee 140, and he would take me flying. So this is about 75. And I've always wanted to be a pilot. And then my first airplane ride was on American, sat in the cockpit of a 727 going from DC-8 to Knoxville one year. And I'm like, this is it. This is what I want to be.
Yeah.
And then, as you go through it, how do I get there, right? The guidance counselor in 8th grade had this book that opened up and said, commercial airline pilot. Majority of airline pilots come from the military. Otherwise, you got to go to an aviation school. All requires a bachelor's. Blah 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 blah. Paragraph was about that much.
Yeah.
So I went down to the airport, Nashville Airport, back. No terrorists back then. Just walk through security, and I would wait and find old guys like us showing up with.
Hey, whoa,
dude, Goomson, we are those old guys. We were 30 when we got hired in our 30s, and now we used to look at the guys' mandatory retirement was 60. Same back then. Now we are two guys, man. 3 years from retirement right here. But um, I would walk up to some captain and go, hey, boss, my name's Mitch Bell. I'm a eighth grade student, Swanson Junior High. Could I interview you and your co-pilot and your engineer about how you became an airline pilot? Because that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
Dude, that was good for every free hamburger and a Coke, Come on, yeah. But that's how I did it. And then of course Top Gun came out. Did you go to the academy? I can't remember.
No, I was AOCS, which doesn't exist anymore, the officer and gentleman thing in Pensacola. So now it's OCS, everybody's together. But no, I did that route. So like the 4-month wonder.
Where'd you go to college?
Embry-Riddle in Daytona.
Okay. So I went to the Naval Academy, dropped my sister off for a ring dance, and my mom and I had driven up there. Top Gun had come out that night. So we watched it with an entire movie theater full of Naval Academy midshipmen.
Yeah.
And then that was it, man. I joined the Marines at 19 because they had a guaranteed flight contract. And then off we go. But, like you were saying earlier, for every set of wings, 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10 guys will finally achieve that dream and get their wings.
Right.
And then, of course, when you're in flight school, you must have been number 1, number 2, as they're doing the ratings. And the guy comes in, he goes, it's based off of 3 things. It's based off your grades, based off needs of the Marine Corps, and what you want, So,
yeah.
So even though you may have had jet grades, there was a draft for helicopters that week or whatever. I mean, God, you're just.
Yeah, I think there were just a whole lot of F-18s my week.
Is it? So you did Corpus or Pensacola?
So I did Pensacola to start, T-34s, not flying those anymore. And then I went to Meridian, T-2s, not flying those anymore. And then I went to Kingsville because I was part of an AOCS class that was the pilot OCS class, not to be confused with aviator, but they were trying to put all the surface warfare and the supply and everybody through us. So we had 06s and admirals walking around with clipboards grading what was going on. And we were told, ignore them. They're not here. They don't exist. You'll never speak of this. But as a result, they put us through some very unique pipelines. Instead of, you go to Pensacola and then you go to Kingsville and then you're done. We were kind of all over the place. So
oh, wow.
We did 3 different training bases with airplanes, none of which are around anymore. I think the T-45, I think I was in the A and now it's the C. So also airplane on a stick. And then got F-18s out of that. I was already selected, but I went through the pipeline, then went to Lemoore and did my fleet portion of my tour in Lemoore, California, Garden Spot.
Yeah, garden spot, hot chick behind every palm tree. Were you already married before you got into the fleet, or?
So yes, I met my college sweetheart, love of life type in college. We both went to Embry-Riddle, and she followed me through. We met in 1991, and then we got married in 1994. I joined the Navy in 1993, so she knew what she was buying. I think 30 years later, she's like, "Did I really?" But she's awesome, and she's been patient through all of this. I think she's ready. I'm retiring this year, so I think she's kind of ready for that. But
yeah, no kidding. I mean, all right. What people don't realize is that 29 years total. You're as a reservist, you're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and so you might get done with the 3-day trip at work. Then you got to go do your reserve gig. And you're a captain now. I mean, you made it to 06. That's pretty damn good.
Yeah, like I said, lowering the standards. But no, the irony was I was on an 8-month deployment, my last cruise, and the writing was on the wall because things were going pretty well, and right place, right time, better lucky than good, and all that stuff. And I was kind of set up to go to a department head role, then back to sea with workups. And on the TAC Air side, F-18s, workups are worse than cruise because you're at home, then you go to Fallon for a month, then you come home for 2 weeks, then you go to the boat for 6 weeks, then you come home and you go to Fallon. It's like you're always packing and unpacking. So it's easier to just cut the cord, deploy, get it over.
Right.
So it was going to be a compressed turnaround, like 10 months where I'm gone all the time, Fallon, boat, back and forth, which, like I said, is harder because it's a lot of goodbyes, a lot of hellos, a lot of, the dog growls at you because they don't recognize you. The wife growls at you because she doesn't recognize you. But it was just set up to be kind of a mess. And So I said, hey, you know what? I don't want to do this to the family anymore. I'm going to go to the reserves. And the irony is, I think I have been busier and gone more as a reserve guy. I'm your atypical reserve guy. 4 command tours. I was a post major command. I think I have been, not to take away from the active component, guys and gals, but let's say I was busier and gone more than I ever would have expected. I thought it was coming down off step, and it was actually just a different flavor. So yes, I have been busy. Busy is kind of an understatement to do it. Not because I'm doing a lot, just because I'm not good at managing time, probably. But yeah, it's been a unique ride and adventure. Wouldn't trade any of it for a second. Met great people. A lot of fantastic people. Made me look taller, faster, funnier, better than I am. And wouldn't trade it for a second. But it's been busy, robust.
So when did you get off active duty?
So also kind of an atypical story. I left the active duty Navy after 14 years, which is, if you do the math, not a great financial plan. Stick it out for 6 more years, get a retirement. Yeah. But I left in 2007. I went into federal law enforcement because I had to make a break because of an age requirement to get into federal law enforcement so you can retire. I did that for about 8 years. Loved the job, hated management. They were not remotely friendly to reservists at all, to a point of it was just awful. And my wife one day goes, hey, been with you forever. I'll always support, but you kind of come home mad and brooding every day. Mm-hmm. So right then and there, I went, it's not fair to be scowling at the dinner table with young kids. So right that minute, I decided I'm not going to do it anymore. So went to the airlines, still missed the other stuff because it was, I was into a lot of cool stuff. But I just couldn't be messed with by management over serving a different part of the government. So unfortunately, I had to leave that piece behind. Also, great experience. Met wonderful people that I know to this day. I think I did some good for the country and the community. But
can you say which one you were in?
Yeah, I was with Department of Homeland Security, Customs and Border Protection, but I was with the Air and Marine Unit. So we had Blackhawks and A-Star helicopters. We had big Miami Vice boats. We did a bunch of interdiction of personnel and contraband.
Where were you based?
San Diego, actually, North Island. It's actually on base.
Did you ever get together with Nino Gambino?
I don't know Nino Gambino.
Yeah, Natalie. His nickname's Nino, but from the Gambino family, but he was Customs Border Air stuff too. His famous deal was down in Puerto Rico. He took off, they were doing a thing, and all of a sudden they see that light coming across the ocean. It turns its light off. It starts flying over the airfield. He's tracking it, UFO.
Yeah, drug plane.
Yeah, drug plane, right? Yeah. That goes into the water and it comes out as 2. Yeah, that was pretty funny. Yeah, Nito. So you did that. That was a cool trip. And then you decided to go to the airlines.
Yeah, I mean, it was the logical step, right? I'm a one-trick pony. I only do one thing. It's fly airplanes. I'm not even that good at that. So it's like, what else am I going to do? I don't have any other skills. So when I got out of the active component, I was actually on deployment in the Gulf. We were fighting OIF at the time. It was like April 2003. And I realized that the writing on the wall was, I'm going to be gone a whole lot more, not fair to the family. We're 2 going on 4, and I just don't want to do that to my wife. So dropping the letter. So I reached out to all my buddies in the airline. So think about this. This is early 2003. Hey, guys, I'm thinking about taking you up on the offer for some letters to go to the airlines. What do you think? And, of course, everybody's like, oh, my God, no. Your timing could not be worse. Don't leave. Don't get out. So I weighed the family issue and I went, I have to. I'll find something. I got to do something other than keep being gone all the time with young kids and a very patient wife. So I sent my letter to the captain of the ship because I was technically ship's company, but it was OIF. So I never did that job. I was always flying with the air wing. And he calls me up on the big red bat phone downstairs and he goes, hey, Ferg, it's Captain. Listen, I hate to see that you get out. What if I get you a job flying F-5s? And I go, oh, those are the little ones from Top Gun? He goes, yeah, it's up in Fallon, but I can make the deal, but I need to know right now. Well, sir, can I talk to my wife? And he goes, yeah, but make it quick and get back to me by tomorrow. So I call my wife on the special, phone on the boat because my job had access to that. And I go, hey, what do you think? The airline's not looking so good. Moving up to Fallon, living in Reno, flying the little adversary airplanes. And she goes, okay, well, let's talk about it when you get off deployment. And then the line goes dead because, we set these conditions on the boat where the comms go down to external stuff.
Right.
Then the big red phone rings and it's the captain. He goes, hey, I changed my mind. I need to know right now. You going to do it or not? Like 1 minute after the previous conversation I had with him. I said,
sure.
Well, sounds great, boss. So that he made a call and got me into VFC 13, the adversary squadron, which was fantastic. Best tour ever, best people ever. And that launched my adversary career in the Navy.
Well, how did that go over? Fast forward when you got a chance to actually talk to your wife for a couple minutes.
Thank God, if I recall. Now, this is 15 years ago, almost 20 years ago. She goes, I think you're right. I think maybe that airline thing isn't the timing, so maybe we should do something like that. I'm like, okay, honey, I'll set it up. It was something like that, but it was, I land on my feet typically, so he would have supported regardless. But it was obvious that not to try to go to the airline. So I did that for an active tour for 3 years, and then I stayed in to do it as a reservist for 7 more.
And you were the CEO. You were the 30th CEO there, right?
Commanding VFC 13 from 2012 to 13 in the end.
And what I love is I found this. I was looking for it in the movie, but the picture of you guys drinking, and this was in the bar, right?
Yeah.
You snuck your plaque in the bar, did you?
Yeah, it's an actual tale from an F5. It's when I left. So the CO typically gives some sort of a presento to the officer's wardroom and to the chief's mess, and then some general thing to the squadron. So that was my thing for the chief's mess, or for the officer's wardroom. It won in the Oak Club at Fallon. It's got everybody's name on it who served as an officer when I was in command, and it's the actual tail. So you can't see this, but it's a real tail, and we had it wired up, and it lights up. The light on the tail goes. So whenever there's a bandit in the club, they push the button, the light comes on, and other bandits can drive by the club and go, oh, there's bandits in the club. Let's go drink.
Oh, no way. Oh, that's awesome. Man, I like it.
So yeah, actually in the movie, there's a ton of like that. That's in the movie, that tail hook. If you could pan around and see some of the other stuff that's in here. They wanted stuff to populate the hard deck, the fake bar, the Oak Club bar. So I go, well, I can bring a couple things from my house. They're like, yeah, what do you got? So I had them send a truck over to the house, and I got all the stuff, and I sent a truck to Fallon, and I got that and a bunch of things. So as I watched the movie and pan around, I'm like, that's mine, that's mine, that's mine, that's mine.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
There's stuff in the bar that's actually in this room.
Well, I'm jumping ahead, but let's go back. Now you're a reservist, you're flying for the airlines. How do you get this job with Paramount to do Top Gun Maverick?
Same way I get all my other jobs in the Navy. Either nobody else available or nobody willing to do it.
Right.
And literally that was it. So I was flying for Delta, and I got a call from another Delta pilot who was not a Delta pilot at the time, but he was finishing active duty. He was the chief of staff for Naval Air Force Reserve. So the guy that runs, the 2-star, runs all reserve naval aviation writ large. And he goes, hey, the deputy, the number 2 guy that works for the admiral is retiring, and they haven't screened and vetted his replacement. It's got to be a post major command, a base, a wing, or you've had a major command to get into this job. And I'm like, well, I haven't had a base or wing. And he's like, yeah, but it's a gap job. It's 4 months, maybe 6. I've already vetted you to the admiral. He knows who you are. He's willing to take you on board and do this. So would you want to do this? It's in San Diego. And I went, yeah, it sounds great. So I do this job for him. He takes a liking to me for whatever his bad judgment is. And I ended up doing this job for about 15 months. Then I'm awarded 777 with Delta at a time when staffing was really low. So every 777 guy is getting premium trips, making tons of money. I go, this is great. I'm going to come out of this job, and now I'm going to make tons of money. So the 3-star, his chief of staff, calls me in and says, hey, I need you to do this Top Gun movie thing. I'm like, no, I'm good. I've got other plans. And we go back and forth about this. And he basically goes, well, I really need you to do it. I said, well, I'm really a reservist. And there's people killing to do this job. And I ain't one of them. So back and forth, great guy. And, he pulls some hard sell. He pulls some guilt stuff. He goes, the enemy's coming over the horizon. And if we don't recruit because you didn't do this, it's on you. I can hear the music and the flag. And he's kidding. But so he says, well, really think about it. And I go, my man, I've thought about it a bunch of times. And I'm not the guy. I'll find you the guy, but I'm not the guy. So I go home that night and I'm talking to my wife and she goes, well, what do you really think? I said, I think I need to be plugged in back at home, excuse me, doing the easy job, which at the time would have been, the Delta wide body. I just don't think it's the way to go. And she goes, okay, so whatever you think. Go in the next day, tell him, final answer, not doing it. Walk out of his office, the phone rings. It's my wife. And she goes, you need to do it. I'm like, what?
I just said no.
He just left his office. And I said, not retractable, non-negotiable, not doing it. I said, why are you telling me this now and not, 90 seconds ago? And she says, well, because if you're not part of this movie and it's fantastic, you're going to regret that you didn't have the opportunity to do it. And she goes, and if you are not part of this movie and it's horrible, you're going to wonder the whole rest of your life if you could have done it better. And you got in on the first movie. This is like, you're getting ready to leave. Isn't this a nice full circle?
Right.
I said, okay, you're right. So I ended up going back in there and I'm like, hey, about that not doing it, final offer, non-negotiable thing. And he's like, so you're in, right? So I ended up doing it. It's supposed to be also 6 months. And it ended up being like 14 months of orders. I did probably a year of drills and non-paid drills and little bits of orders. When I was back at Delta doing, there's post-production, there's sitting with the special effects guys for the enemy airplanes, the Havoc, the SU-57s, because we didn't have those, right? So we would take an F-18, it would do the actual maneuver, and then they would have to add canards and thrust vector and make the flight controls move, but they're not pilots. So I'd watch it, I'm like, those rudders are going backwards. They need to go the other way. And they don't go that fast when the airplane is, supersonic. They move really slow. And when he's slow, they deflect a lot. So I would go up there and do all this detail work with the special effects guys, and which is a horrible way to watch a movie, by the way, like this. You got a pad and a pen and you're watching it and you're going, okay, stop. And then we would take a bunch of notes and then some other guy would take notes and then we'd watch 7 more seconds of it. It's not an enjoyable way to watch a movie. It takes like 9 hours to watch the movie.
I got a great picture of you.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
With Jerry.
Oh, he's great. Jerry's a great guy.
So there you are working on stuff on the movie. Going over. Let me ask you, did you ever know Smegs from the first movie? You met Smegs?
I didn't know him until the movie. And then he reached out to me or I reached out to him. I was up in Hollywood. We did a lot of stuff on sound stages up there and somehow it just worked out. I'm like, well, I'm up here. I'm in Santa Monica right now. And he goes, well, you want to get together, go have dinner? I'm like, that'd be great. So we went and we had dinner at some place that he's, it's like Cheers. He walks in, they go, Smegs, like they all know him. And we sat and had dinner and talked for 3 hours about his experiences, my experiences, some very similar, some very different, but it was a really good perspective to get his from 36 years prior. Cause people say that everybody says there's like 5 different people that were the me 30 years ago. Was it Smegs? Was it Bio? Was it Viper? I think they all had individual roles in this film. I was like the wall-to-wall guy because I did everything. There were, a couple Navy guys that did some stuff earlier before me, but Smegs and those guys came in at the end. And like, for example, he would tell a story that he watched the movie and there was very little dialogue during the dogfighting scenes. And I think he said there was no score during the dogfight. There was no music, which think about any movie you watch today. Like the music is half of it. John Williams has made a career and got 25 Academy Awards just from, cellos and stuff. Right. So because it fundamentally changes, they can make you feel and think anything with music. So I swore Smeg said, yeah, we're just watching these airplanes circle around and nobody's talking. They're just shooting missiles and there's no soundtrack. And it was horrible. So he told Tony Scott, he goes, this is horrible. I wouldn't pay to watch this. I wouldn't watch it for free. You need to add, you need to add this and that and that. So I think it was Smegs, Bio, and Viper who came in on this mutual platform of it's horrible unless you do the following things, which, clearly fundamentally changed because the movie, I keep using the word in these interviews, iconic. It's an iconic movie. I mean, it's 40 years old. I can go on TV right now, and if you give me enough time, I'll find it. It's somewhere on, and not because the new one's out, but it's a movie that has stood the test of time. So clearly they did great things back in the mid 80s that carried the platform. So
Well, let me ask you this. Did you have to do a little interview with the production company and go see Tom and Jerry and do a one-on-one, or was it this is our guy?
yeah, no, I worked for the Navy. They, in fact, initially there's like, why do we need him? Because initially I was seen as a significant barrier because my entire job going into it was don't let them kill anybody or wreck anything. Like that's all we ask. We don't care. The script is kind of set and we know it's going to be Hollywood and goofy, but there's a lot of dynamic stuff that's going to go on. So just 4 months, make sure they're not going to do anything stupid. And then we'll turn it over to squadron CEOs and whatever. So initially I was just don't crash airplanes. And, they would say things like Tom wants what Tom wants. And he is, let's say he's not a person who's accustomed to being told no. So they would say, we're going to do this and we're going to have 20 airplanes and they'd be like this underneath the bridge, supersonic. And then we're going to, whatever. And I go, yeah, we're not doing that because you'll die. So, or it was just something it was not within my risk tolerance because, the Navy, I think, picked me, nobody else available. But I've had some big jobs in the Navy where I've been in charge of a lot of aviation assets and dynamic things. And I've led in combat where I think the Navy has finally figured out that, okay, his judgment is proven enough that will allow him to be the voice of the Navy, which the 3-star, the air boss, that was his, I don't know if this is a family show, if I can directly quote him, but
you can say whatever you want. Yeah.
It's a Marine show. So he goes, on day one on the set, he comes up to me. He goes, all right, Ferg, you speak for me. I don't need to hear from you. Use your best judgment. Don't fuck this up. Literally. And he walks away. And I'm like, okay, I don't know anything about movies. And this is the biggest thing to happen in the Navy in 40 years. And all I get is DFIU, which was in the end was great because I would call his chief of staff. Hey, Caesar, I don't know about, do you think the boss needs to know about this? He goes, he said, it's up to you, man. So if you think you need to talk to him, but he's put it all on you, which I now know as a senior guy was probably like, it may have been distancing. Like, don't give me anything.
Fire Ferg. It was Ferg's fault, man. Cut him off.
That was made clear that the amount of responsibility and risk that was put on. I mean, think about it. A reserve airline 06. Like had billions of dollars worth of assets. I was watching crazy shit go on with junior pilots because that was my thing was if I'm going to do this for you guys, I'm picking who's flying and it ain't going to be guys like me because they offered me a Super Hornet qual. Hey, we'll send you up to Lemoore and you can be the hero and do all the flying. It's going to be great. I'm like, that sounds like the worst recruiting retention statement I've ever heard in my life. If I was a lieutenant in Lemoore and I heard this conversation, I'd be pissed. So I said, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to pick the guys and the guys and the gals. I'm just going to pick lieutenants, like regular fleet lieutenants, not Top Gun instructors, although we had some, not Blue Angels, although we had one, but your percentage pilot doing all the stuff that you see in the movie is standard average. I don't like the word average, but your basic Mark 1, Mark 0 fleet lieutenant.
Right.
So that was how we got to that stuff. And yeah, it was a huge, like I aged a decade every time I'd have 4 lieutenants taken off to do some insane shit in the airplanes. And I'd be in like the camera jet or I'd be on the radio. So I'm mother henning the whole thing. And they all did great. They did wonderful. Nobody did crazy stuff they were talked into. It was a concern of mine. Like you're flying with the biggest movie star in the world in your back seat. And he might want you to go lower or be inverted or whatever. So for every brief, because I led all the flight briefs, I'd give the flight brief and then they do production would have, and Tom would do his comments and they'd read some lines. And then Kevin LaRosa, the aerial coordinator, would talk about where the camera ship's going to be. Then at the end, I'd say, everybody out if you're not a Navy pilot. and then I would bring together my 1 or 2, 7, or however many we had for the scene, and every time it was the same. I'd go, this is a potential huge gain or huge loss for the Navy, and it all depends on what you do today. So if you follow my guidelines and you stay within the guardrails, I got your back. You will never get in trouble for anything you do, because most of the stuff that they did, we did some stuff on the carrier where I told one of the lieutenants when I came back, I go, if you ever do this stuff again after today, you will lose your wings, guaranteed. This is sanctioned, it's controlled, but all the shit that we just asked you to do is lose your wing stuff. If you ever
Like
just
what? Like
you just did like really low, close passes to the boat, some inverted stuff, like stuff that was very carefully rehearsed. It was very finely risk managed. We talked through everything 100 times. We did stuff at higher altitudes and it got lower. It was extremely tightly risk managed. However, it was not your, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to go next to the ship inverted at 600 knots, and then I'm going to pitch up and do it, whatever. For a lieutenant, not a Blue Angel, not somebody who does that at air shows all the time. It's just your standard fleet lieutenant. So if a fleet lieutenant were to do most of the things that we did at the altitudes we did them, at the proximity to other airplanes, and just the way we choreograph stuff, just on their own, and somebody like me saw it, I'd be like, that guy's done, because they're dangerous, they're unsafe, they're not following the protocol, but this was within protocol. So it was a unique experience of being able to say, I want to take your basic standard Mark I motto fleet lieutenant and have them do things that people will later say there's no way that actually was a real jet or a real pilot or a real whatever, for a lot of reasons. One is they're perfectly capable of doing it. The low stuff with Frank Weiser, Walleye, that's where he's down at, I can say it now because I'm retiring and the movie's been out, but where he's down at 10 feet. In fact, you showed a picture in the beginning. That's not even the lowest, but he came lower, and we made it. Could a lieutenant do that? Yeah. Could you or I do that? Sure. But why? When I can have a Blue Angel who's got more time down low than anybody. So Walleye was the guy, because he's been 2 tours of Blue Angels. He's been 7, 6, 5, 6, and 5. So he's got 5 years flying the Blue Jet, and then he was a transition guy, so he's really got more time flying Blue Angel jets or the profile than anybody. Why wouldn't I use somebody like him? Because it just adds a layer of safety. Yeah. So, but for the most part, it was lieutenants, so that there's a retention issue. I got to fly in Top Gun. And then let's, without putting a country in this, if country X watches this movie and then sees this interview or like reads about this and goes, wait, all that crazy shit was just a standard Lemoore lieutenant. So what are the quote, A-list
Top Gun guys?
Yeah. What do those people bring to the table? And it's the same thing. It's just a different level of proficiency and experience.
Well, I got to tell you, when that first came out, when the first trailer hit, I was sitting there watching it. I blew it up on my computer, and you watch Tom. I know now he's in the back, but he peels off, and it's a single seat F-18. And there was a news article that said Tom Cruise demands Navy allow them to fly the jets. And so I got on a forum with a bunch of buddies, a bunch of them Navy dudes, Marines. And I posted this question. I'm like, all right, I just watched this. I put the clip up. I heard Tom Cruise wanted to fly the jets. Did they really give that guy the keys to an F-18? I mean, I could see he's qualified jet guy, P-51. I knew he had the Mustang, but did they really let him fly it? And they're like, no. And then they explained to me, when you watch it, you can look at the stations on the wing and realize that this is a different model. And so it goes from the 2-seat to the 1-seat, and the dude's got the helmet on, and the editing was incredible. I got to say, they did a good job on that.
For the record, Taco, so I've watched 1 Academy Awards in my life, and that was one too many. And that was the one, 3 weeks ago. I kind of knew how it was going to go, because this isn't the kind of movie, $1.5 billion. Everybody loves it. It literally, that movie saved movie theaters. It saved the movie industry, right? that is not the kind of movie that wins an Academy Award because it's not weird or funky or feel good. Like nothing against the movie that won, but I'm like, entertaining, unique, unusual, but nothing I'm going to take to my grave. Like when I'm buried, I want a picture of my family and a DVD of the crazy Asian Kung Fu movie. It just wasn't like that's. So, a movie like Top Gun, especially pro-America, pro-military, it's Hollywood, man. So the Academy, that is not their jam. That is not what they reward. However, I was absolutely stunned and appalled that Eddie Hamilton, who was the editor,
Right.
he didn't get the editing, and I think it went to that same movie. Like, so you cut from one kung fu thing to the eating the bubble gum. Like, how hard is that? Versus cutting between 700 hours of aerial footage. I remember being in the first briefing with Eddie, and I didn't know him, and it was a table, and it's like me, Tom, Kevin LaRosa, the producer, the director, and then on the other side, some other folks, and then the actors on one end and some strap hangers. And we're talking about something, and Eddie, pipes up and he goes, "Yeah, well, I'm gonna need this and that." And I'm like, "Who's the British guy talking and why? What's going on?" So I learned over the course of this that Eddie is like this amazing editor, and I had no idea how big a deal editing was to a movie and how fundamentally it can change like what a film is, going from like precise cuts. For example, the off-target scene, right? When they first scripted it and blocked it, it was all four of these airplanes. They hit the target, they come out, they're separated into sections, and then they're kind of moving. The airplanes are getting missile shot at them, and they flow down the valley. I'm like, horrible. That's not what off-target looks like. Off-target is chaos. No two airplanes are together except when they almost hit. Nobody gets a word in on the radio. There's smoke trails everywhere, and they're like, too confusing. So they watch the I can't remember the call sign, but it was the F-16 that gets like 22 SA-2s and a bunch of SA-10s, and then he gets down into the AAA envelope, stroke 16 flight, I think, and the guy dodges an ungodly number of surface-to-air threats to the point that he's down like in a stall, full blower, out of gas, doing 150 knots at 10,000 feet. And it's mayhem. And they go, "Oh, God, how can anybody watch that?" I'm like, you want it to look real, you make it chaos. And so they redid it, and they did some editing, and it was a little better, and it was probably good for the layman. I'm like, I'm telling you, man, if you make this absolutely unfollowable and everything's jittery, and you only any character ever says like 3 words in a clip, and then someone's over them, and then break left, no, you're right, 6, no, come. That's what it looks like. And I think that whoever you might lose, the plumber that you might lose, like, well, I don't know what's going on. You're going to get, at the speed of internet, all these Top Gun instructors and F-16 guys and F-15 guys and Hornet and Tomcat who are like, it was exactly like Afghanistan or Iraq or Bosnia. So they ended up acquiescing that. But think about the job that Eddie Hamilton had cutting these things together. If you watch, next time you watch that scene, think about how complicated it was to fit hundreds of hours of aerial footage together into a scene that's like 2.5 minutes long.
Yeah.
And it is perfect. It is exactly like coming off target in a contested environment where everybody's defending. You're trying not to hit other airplanes because everybody's doing their own thing. And then the other one was cinematography. I don't think anyone went up for that. And Claudia Miranda, who did all the amazing lighting and the blocking and all that stuff, nothing. I mean, we got sound, which was great because the sound was great for the movie, and it's still an Academy Award-winning movie. But I think, and adapted screenplay for Chris McQuarrie, like brilliant writer, director. I think I knew it wasn't going to get Best Picture, but I think everything else that it was robbed of to give this one movie like the sweep, which was good, but I don't think it was that good. Although I did like the guy from Indiana Jones, can't remember his name, who was the guy that got the Best Supporting Actor.
The Short Round.
Yeah, Short Round. And
I don't even know his real name. I just remember Short Round.
The American Dream, and it was the best part of the whole, 4 hours or whatever it was. But that part was great. Everything else I thought was stupid.
Well, if you pull, I mean, I'm a gold winger, but I'm a C-130 puke, man. I passed you gas. You guys would slide up, and we'd put the hoses out, stabilized, port stabilized. Roger that, cleared to contact. But for me to watch it, I'm like, it had me fooled. I'm not a jet guy, but damn, I think Tom Cruise, they actually let him fly an F-18. He's got enough money he could buy one,
So have you heard that story where
No.
he wanted to, and I'm like, yeah, I can't. There's no path from here to there, because if I put you in the front and we have an instructor in the back, there are critical phases of flight where there's compound emergencies that could occur that if you're not qualified in the airplane, we could lose the airplane. Down low, in a turn, snuff the inside motor, whatever. It just doesn't make any sense. And he goes, well, then put me through the course. I'm like, well, I can't do that either. And he goes, why? I'll study. I'll take time off. I'm like, yeah, I know you're very dedicated and focused, but I can't put you in a classroom with a bunch of 20-somethings as the biggest movie star in the world. I can't give you your own course. And he goes, no, I'll just be one of the guys. I'm like, you're Tom Cruise. You'll never just be one of the guys. You are a distraction. And I just can't, I'm speaking for the CEO of that squadron. I can't have you distracting people who have to learn. It just doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry. So then he goes, well, I want to talk to your boss. So he goes and he talks to a 3-star who says, yeah, I'm sorry. There's just no way from here to there. And somehow in that conversation, it comes up. He goes, well, what does a Hornet cost? And at the time it was, I think they were quoting it around $65 million. And he said words to the effect of, really? And
I could buy one.
I could buy 9 of them. So the gears were turning like, well, can I just buy one? So yeah, I guarantee he was thinking about it, because he's not short of cash, and he wants what he wants. In the end, he and I ended up having a really good relationship about all the aviation stuff, because he's a very experienced pilot. He does almost all his flying in movies, American made. He went out and bought a helicopter, got a rating, and went to down flying and aerobatic school for that. One of the Mission Impossibles where he's doing dogfighting in the helicopter. So a lot of that's him. American made, where he's in the old airplane and he's coming in on the short runways. That's all him. So he flew the P-51 in this movie. So he's experienced. Yeah, it's a beautiful airplane. It's gorgeous.
How many hours does he have in that now?
I never asked him. I don't know. He doesn't fly it as much as he probably wants to, because he's always going to some movie set. But it lives up in north of LA, and is kept by a very experienced P-51 maintainer and pilot who does a lot of the movie flying. I worked with him on Devotion as well. So he flies Tom's airplane and maintains it. But Tom's at the point where I go, hey, look, if I tell you no, it's not me wanting to have a rocking chair grandchild story. And then there was the time I told Tom no. That's bullshit. I'm not doing it to say no. I'm doing it for safety. I want to protect you. I want to protect the Navy. I want to keep people safe. There's a reason. And he got on board with that, to the point where we'd be in a brief and somebody would not be paying attention, would, say, well, we really need to do this. And Tom would shut him down, which is great, because I'm just sitting to his right, and he'd be like, hey, we're done. Ferg doesn't want to do this or that, because he realized that I think I was not just the voice of no. I was, my whole job was don't kill anybody. Beyond that, who cares what else I did? It didn't matter. But the big job was, don't let all this dynamic flying, because anything that happened, if we dinged an airplane, the Navy would be like, hey, sorry guys, you're on your own. Anything happens, especially mishap where we kill somebody, God forbid, or whatever. The Navy, anything we stood to gain, lost times a million. There's no, can you imagine the message? Hey, come join the Navy. We kill people. It just wouldn't have. It wouldn't have
killed Tom Cruise. No more movies. No more movies for you. I know it's got to be hard to say no to a guy in that level. And what's funny is, right up the road, Tom bought a Marchetti. This is 25, 30 years ago. He bought one of those Marchettis that you use for the air combat class. And this guy, Frank, he's an old retired American guy, 7.6 captain. He was the dealer for the States, and he was also FAA designee. Tom Cruise has to come out to Texas to get checked out in this thing. So he's talking to him. He goes, hey, Frank, I got to fly back to go do this deal with the movie. Do you mind flying my airplane back? And I'll never forget his story that he tells is, why, Mr. Top Gun himself. Hell no. What do you mean, Frank? No, I'm not flying your airplane back, Tom. I need the airplane back. Fly it back yourself. That's the only way you're going to learn how to fly that airplane, Tom, is fly it back yourself. So you're not going to fly it for me, Frank? Do I stutter? No.
Well,
and that's Frank. And if you know Frank Frank is just, he'll wire brush the living crap out of anybody. But I don't think Tom Cruise was Top Gun famous, but not on the stratosphere he is now. But it was still kind of a funny story.
Well, I'll tell you that. So that interesting segue, that was kind of when you said it must have been hard saying no to somebody like that. That was the actual initial problem. Was I didn't have a hard time saying no because I didn't work for Paramount. I worked for the Navy, and I was there to protect the Navy's interests and the naval aviators and the image and the core values. So when I would first say no to something, I was kind of like Frank. I mean, like, not only no, but yes, you're high. No way. That's stupid. So we got into some of this early on because I wasn't very diplomatic in a lot of things. And then we had one big dust up that was a big deal. And I didn't handle it well because I'm like, not only no, but that's a stupid question. I was a jerk about it. The answer was clearly no, but I could have said, hey, what if we think about this a different way? And I didn't do that. So there was a big, like, coming to a head on all this stuff. And then it ended up working out because the air boss goes, hey, so you guys know, because they want to go talk to him over whatever this issue was. And he goes, just so you know, he's me, right? So if you think you need to talk to me again, you have to ask him. And if he thinks you get to talk. So it was a very nice, like, he's the gatekeeper, he's in charge. Wow. So it turned the relationship in a direction that, but what really fixed it was somebody comes up to me. We're shooting in San Diego. Somebody comes up and says, hey, Mr. Bruckheimer would like it if you could come by over to the other set. So they grab me and they take me over there. And Jerry, who's the nicest guy in the world, love the guy. He goes, we're walking down the beach to the hard deck, that thing we built on the beach. That's the bar.
Right.
And he kind of goes, he says, boy, Ferg, I really appreciate and I respect your loyalty and your passion for your naval aviation and the craft and your brothers and sisters. And he kind of puts his arm around me in a really fatherly way. He's in his mid 70s and he goes, but one thing I would offer to you in as nice a way as I can say this is possible is, delivery is actually kind of important. When it was something like that. It was basically like, it was a very, very nice way. He was telling me I was being an asshole in a way that when I left the conversation, I'm like, oh my God, I was such an asshole and I'm going to not be an asshole anymore. He was completely right because my delivery on all these things was like, nope. And it could have been different. And from then on, when they go, hey, we want to fly 10 jets underneath the Coronado Bridge, supersonic at 10 feet, and then pitch out into this different stuff, then I would say, well, I don't think that's going to be as safe as I have a risk tolerance for. So what if we did this? Hey, let's get with the aero coordinator. Let's talk about how high the bridge is. And let's find some other way to do it. And, not that I became a yes man. I absolutely didn't. But my delivery of, we need to find a different way to do that that's safer. And it still gets the effect that you want. But it was because Jerry just was like, and it was, I wish I could do what he did with people to just be like, hey, you're being an asshole and your delivery sucks, make it better. But in a way that when you walk away, you're like, oh, I feel really good about how my delivery is going to be in the future,
Yeah. Did your wife buy a book of how to win friends and influence people and say,
exactly.
Ferg, here you go, read this.
Yeah. But from then on, everything was, we had, the relationship, because it was all me. It was my poor delivery. I'm under a lot of stress. Like if we wreck a jet or if the Navy looks bad, it's not going to be the Navy looks bad. It's going to be that stupid reserve airline guy screwed this up. And
Right.
So there was a lot of pressure on there. But I think it all worked out really well after that.
Hey, let me ask you a technical question. The scene where he's down low and then he thumps him, goes in between them. Is that, you guys ever do that flying jets? I mean, is that a thing?
Not at that range. No, we had something in the bandit world that we would call the wild card, where they would. It was the most fun thing to do on the range. So you got a large force exercise. You got maybe anywhere from 20 to 50 fighters, and they're going to go usually in Fallon. It's from east to west into the Bravo 17 target complex, and there's electronic attack guys push out, and there's the E2, and there's the fighters and the sweeps and the bombers, and it's this massive of an overcast aluminum. But we would launch an F5, a single F5 would take off right behind all the fighters. And we know the area, right? We don't even have a radar altimeter, but we know what 100 feet looks like. So we would have laser GCI, the controllers on the ground, because we have these tax pods that have telemetry on them, and they would vector us directly be underneath the strike package. They're climbing up, doing all their admin. They're at 30, 35,000 feet, and we're at 100 feet. So we can rage around down there, and all these cats would be getting their admin set. They got 100 miles of push to go, and they're getting all ready, and they're getting out, and they're big, spreading out. And you're just looking up at 40 airplanes. And then they would call fights on. This huge gaggle of airplanes would push in waves. And then the strikers would push. Maybe it's like 8, Hornet Tomcat combo or something. And you're doing 600 knots on the deck, and you would weave your way up behind them until you're in a position where you have kinetic energy, and they still haven't seen you because they're like, we're 150 miles from the target. There's nobody out here except Ferg and his F5, right? So then and the whole point is you got to look everywhere. E2's got to be looking in the dirt. E2's got to be looking behind. The backseaters have to be looking over their shoulders, clearing everybody. And they would get comfortable because they're looking at stuff on their radar that's 100 miles out. They're seeing every bend. They have all these amazing radars and everything's great, but they're not doing day one stuff. So we would come up, and I would typically, you have a wall of airplanes, but they're like a quarter mile to a half a mile to as we progress into the digital age, they get further apart. So I would go ripping up right between them. And then, it wasn't like, but you go between them. And that was the message, right? Was, hey guys, I've been here the whole time. So yeah, we would never do that at that range. And they asked to do it. They're like, well, so how tall is a Hornet? I'm like, yeah, it's about 18 feet from, the bottom to the top of the tails. So let's just put these guys 50 feet apart, and there's 30 feet to spare. I'm like, yeah. So what we did was, and I can say this now because I think it's out there, but it was called a composite shot, where you film the two airplanes from the side, and then we do a bunch of these breakaway, and then they would film the two airplanes with the other airplane, like a movie punch, coming from the side where he's splitting up between the section. And then Eddie would take it and put it all together. So it looks, I think you and I watched it. We're like, nah, he wasn't right between them, but
no, it looked good.
I thought
it looked great.
I think if you look at it, you're like, I don't know if they really did that. But Joe, the plumber, the Cub Scout, the doctor, the whatever, looks at it, they're like, oh my God, that was so close. But yeah, they want to do that. And I just felt there was no need to do that with a risk. Excuse me, when we can do a profile shot with it's like a movie punch where you go like that.
Yeah.
And I think it worked out great.
Well, the F-14, took that one off the Midway, right?
That one was actually from the museum at Gillespie Field in San Diego.
Okay.
That was the one that was out there. No, there's one on the Midway, but that wasn't the one because it'd be too hard to crane off and move through downtown. So we took the one from Gillespie. Select Kidrick, who runs that whole museum, was very kind to loan us that airplane. And we painted it up like I call it the Hunger Games Air Force because it looks like the Hunger Games stuff. But
yeah.
Yeah, I hated that. I brought it up, and they're like, "It's already done." So then we craned it on the ship, and the next day it's like on all these blogs, and it's in San Diego Tribune. Like, people are taking pictures. I'm like, you're on the deck of the carrier overlooking downtown San Diego. Anyone in a hotel can get a picture of that.
Right.
So yeah, they're like, what do you want me to do? Put a big fence around the aircraft carrier?
And then where did they take that to? They took it up somewhere up in the mountains for that scene.
We're in South Tahoe. Yeah, that was crazy because we had to take the airplane apart. It was too big for the wide load, so we had to take the wings off.
Yeah.
And then it got to the border of California and Nevada, and some very, very obscure permit for like bringing a war machine across the state line or something stupid. And there's like that one park ranger or something. He's like, sorry, folks, park's closed. Moose up front should have told you can't bring the Tomcat here. So it got stuck in the Donner Pass for like a day while we're waiting to film. And they had to it was some really, really stupid, bureaucratic, silly little thing. Like, the Tahoe, the Lake Tahoe Movie Authority is betting on $100 million of revenue from this or something. So maybe let the thing go through. So I think some guy got a talking to over his like school crossing guard approach to this.
And it looked great with the Huffer starting it up and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
All that CGI. How did they taxi it out? Were you there for that?
Yeah. So we had it was under tow. And then the visual effects guys took the tow away. They made it disappear with visual effects. They just make it don't know what they do, but they ones and zeros and they make it where it's not getting towed. It looks like it's taxing, but
That's
we
amazing.
to move and for the stuff you're talking about, the realism, they go, how would we start it? And I'm like, you get a Tomcat guy who comes in here and shows you everything about an actual starting of a Tomcat and how they would do that, because there's little things in a movie that aren't going to cost you anything to do, but are going to give you a lot of street cred for realism. So I got Chad Mingo was a guy, was a squatter mate of mine who I brought him up. He lives just outside of Lake Tahoe, and we flew F5s together. So I'm like, hey man, I need you to come up for 2 days and be the Tomcat guy on the set for answer all kinds of questions. And I need you to show how this thing works. And we got an APU from where, like a big old school, like ancient APU.
Yeah.
And to the little things like, how would you get on the Tomcat when you're on the road doing a cross country? He goes, the one guy gets up and then we fold the stairs and then the other guy gets up on the horizontal stab. I'm like, it really works. And he goes, yeah, it's just what we do. The Rio jumps up on the back and climbs forward. So we ended up doing that. We ended up doing, pulling the pins and getting everything right. So there's a lot of stuff in the movie that we fought real hard, like Phoenix engine fire, right? They were just going to have an engine fire, and it was like there was nothing to it. And I'm like, I think you got to go down into the weeds and get in the NATOPs. And I think she would be saying these. Well, I know she would. I'm like, extinguishing fire, engine throttling back. So we went through the NATOPs and we wrote it into the script. Like, this is what you would do for the engine fire, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of little things, like Coochie Mingo, the splitting the throttles. I'm like, how would he, if he's against a fifth-gen fighter, how's he going to come around? Like, that airplane's not going to hack it against a Havoc. There's just no way. Digital flight controls, thrust vector, thrust to weight. And he goes, well, there's some old school Tomcat tricks that work. It wouldn't work in version of the Tomcat because the engines were just not very reliable. But in a D, which had good engines, you could split the throttles, big Buddha rudder. And he goes, would that work? Is it like crazy dangerous? He goes, oh yeah. If you screw it up, you die. But that's where he does he splits the throttles, because Tomcat, those engines are like 11 and a half feet apart or something.
Yeah.
So, you induce a massive amount of asymmetry. You wouldn't even have to kick rudder. That airplane's just going to go like that. Wow. So that was a nice touch to add the splitting the throttles coming around, things like that. But then some of it was just Hollywood that you couldn't get around. Like off target, they're punching out flares left and right. Like you would have flares in the program because it would be, you'd load up the buckets with a program tailored to the perceived threat. Like maybe it's flare, pause, chaff, flare, whatever, for the threat that you expect to encounter. When you hit the button on the side, it's going to go program and dump it. But chaff doesn't look cool, and flares don't sound like they sound in the movie. But when Eddie and the sound guys get done with it, it's and it looks really cool. And the plumber, cool too. The plumber and the Cub Scout and the doctor are like, oh, that's really amazing. And all the Top Gun instructors are like, yeah, flares don't work against SA-18s or whatever. Who cares? Because
mom and pop from Kansas, they're not going to care, right?
And that's the percentage demographic, right? There's only so many you and me. There's a whole lot more regular people who are, in the Top Gun fan group or just going to see the movie because it's cool.
Well, I love this. You posted this on your Glenn Powell had posted this. Yeah. That's your flight jacket, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's cool shit. Did he steal it from you?
What's that?
Did he steal it, swipe it? And
he was somewhere on the set. He walks up and he's like, check me out. I said something. I'm like, yeah. What'd you do to get that? But no, Glenn's a fantastic guy. His whole family is great. It's funny when we talk about him in these interviews, like, oh my God, he's such an asshole. I'm like, this because he's a good actor, because he's none of that. He is the nicest guy you'll ever meet. Very down to earth. His whole family is very nice. We had him here the night before the premiere. His whole family, extended family, and had a great party right in this room. And they're just the most down to earth, humble American Texans, just fantastic. So,
well, I love you. Also, did Glenn pull you in for Devotion? Is that how you ended up working on that one?
Yeah, I don't know if it was Glenn. I know it was. So Kevin LaRosa Jr. does the like. If you see something cool in a movie that's got aviation, it's Kevin LaRosa or Kevin LaRosa Jr. It's Kevin LaRosa, the senior, who's been doing this for 40 years in Hollywood, is passing the torch to his son, Kevin LaRosa Jr. who now, if you see like any Avengers movie, any kind of cool, like Spider-Man, where he's whipping through downtown on where he's shooting the webs from building to building with her in his arms. There was actually a stunt man on a rope on a helicopter, and they're whipping through downtown, and he's slinging them around like that.
Whoa.
And visual effects guys like make the web turn into the building or whatever. So it was Kevin Rosa Jr. and just a whole aerial team and Robert Kay and those guys that worked on Top Gun. And they're out here in Statesboro, Georgia, on a little runway in the middle of nowhere. And they built the USS Leyte like full size on the side so that they could make they could do all this blue screen and use real F4 Corsairs. And they called me up and they go, "Hey, we need you. We need you to come out for this. They don't know what they're doing aircraft carrier Korean War wise. So we need an expert on Korean War aircraft carrier stuff and LSOs." And I'm like, right. You know how old I am? I was not in the Korean War. But we have no idea what we're doing out here. And it's a shit show. You gotta help. So I ended up putting them in touch with Royce Williams, who, Navy Cross winner, flew.
Oh, yeah. Royce shot down the MiGs.
Yeah. The 1V7 just got his Navy Cross about a month and a half ago. So I got in touch with Royce, and Royce answered a lot of questions. And we got another Korean War veteran, flew in the Leyte, knew Huddard Brown, and went out there and was helping. But a movie set is a very dynamic place because time is of an essence and daylight. And there's all these other things. So I learned the hard way on Top Gun, like every second counts. It's all work. It's 14, 15-hour days. And you got to know when to talk, when not to talk. You got to know who to talk to. You got to know. There's a lot of things that I learned in a crash course on, like, Top Gun Maverick is not the movie to cut your teeth on being an advisor. Like, it was great for me, but hey, kid, here's a football and go play in a Super Bowl.
Yep.
So this gentleman was working on the movie, but he wasn't very proactive and he didn't understand kind of how a set works. And so they go, "Hey, we love him. He's a national treasure, but he doesn't understand what you understand about the set. So we'd like to bring you in." And so he left. Part of my contract was he gets to be in the credits or I'm not doing it. And then they go, "Well, he didn't do anything." I'm like, "He fought in the Korean War, so he kind of did something." So I ended up going out there for about 2 or 3 weeks to help them with all the stuff that was aircraft carrier related on the runway and taught them all the LSO stuff. So I had to go over to Tailhook Association. Shout out to my buddies at Tailhook and work with their historians and figure out how the LSOs, I was an LSO in the modern day, but I wasn't the guy with the paddles and the electric orange suit and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I had to spend days learning all the nuances of the LSO stuff because I had to teach the stuntman who was the LSO in the movie how to do this. And at the end, the director's like, "Oh shit, we should have just used you," which would have been a lot of money for me instead of like basically whatever I got just to drop a Delta trip. I'm like, "Yeah, we should have thought about that 3 days ago." I taught them like the Skittles, the guys in the colored jerseys on the flight deck, red, white, whatever. So they would have okay, action, and all the little dudes in the white jerseys would run to one spot, and then the red guys would run somewhere else, and they would be. And I'm like, no, it's these guys do this, and these guys do this, and then when a crash happens, these guys run out, and so there was a lot of little nuanced stuff about an aircraft carrier, even not a generation that I'm from, but I had to get smart on. So I read a ton of books and I watched a bunch of videos about the Korean War, USS Leyte, and I'd obviously read Devotion, the Huddard Brown story, which is a great story that I love, and got real smart on this stuff. So I went out there, and I don't know if I did them any good, but it was cool being attached to that. And so I know Kevin and Robert and those guys that I worked with on Top Gun Maverick had been the ones that called me. And I don't think Glenn, because he was dealing with the acting side of it. And I remember seeing him the first day, and I walked up and he goes, "Hey, they let anybody in here." And, so, but yeah, that was great working on that because I love the story, and it's another great positive naval aviation image and genre, which I'll do anything that positively reflects on our craft and our people.
Well, the only thing wrong with that movie was the aircraft carrier set that they had built. While it looked very realistic, it was too clean.
Oh yeah. Well, so that was an issue that they had already shot some stuff. because I said that with the airplanes too. The airplanes taxi. It was 4 mint condition privately owned Corsairs, and I'm like, they're
Right.
awesome, except like you need chaff marks behind the guns, you need grease around the wheels. So they actually brought like these paint specialists in to add some weathering to the stuff, but they'd already filmed some stuff on the carrier. So once they do establishing, same thing happened in Top Gun. I show up and there's Val Kilmer and he's wearing 2, I think, meritorious service medals right next to each other. And I'm like, what do you got there, buddy? And
wardrobe.
Yeah, it didn't work right. It was before I got in there, and I go, yeah, hey, Joe, the director, I'm like, we got to change that. And he goes, oh, we've already shot stuff with him. I'm like, shoot it again. Well, apparently you don't just like reshoot Val Kilmer because he's A, expensive, and B, he was sick at the time.
Yeah.
So I go, well, Joe, the uniforms are wrong and the medals. Like, I get that it was before I showed up here, but I'm going to take a bunch of shit for it. And he goes, no, nobody will even notice. I'm like, yeah, they'll notice. So then it was Task and Purpose was a website or magazine or something that came out with some really like scorching headline. The movie isn't even out yet, and the technical advisor effed it up. And I'm like, that guy, wouldn't it have been nice if he'd have called me and said, would you care to comment? I thought that was a kind of underhanded sort of thing, which I didn't think was very cool. But
clickbait, man. It was clickbait.
It's total clickbait. But then Joe sends me that article and he goes, hey, Ferg, the internet would like to have a word with you. I'm like, I told you this would happen. I told you that I was going to take shit. And he's like, yeah, don't worry about it. So, there's some stuff that once they spend money and digital film time making something like establishing, it can become very expensive to go reshoot for what they consider to be minor technical.
Mom and pop from Topeka won't even know.
And that's Joe told me that too. He's like, hey, you know how many Top Gun graduates are watching this movie compared to, dudes that work in banks? He goes, I'm not making it for you guys. I'm sorry. I'm making it for the general public. He goes, if I can make you guys happy, that's awesome. But if I only make you happy, and these are his exact words, he goes, it's called a documentary. He goes, I don't make documentaries. I make billion-dollar movies. And I'm like,
right.
Noted.
And it is the same conversation they had 30 years ago. 35 years ago on some of this stuff.
There was some of this, like, too much realism is not entertaining.
Yeah. And what's funny is, have you met Michael Sheriff, buddy with the Top Gun?
We've talked. Yeah, I know who he is. Yeah. Event.
So what happened was I interviewed Pettigrew, Admiral Pettigrew, and Viper was on the show, and I get this guy, Pete Maverick, is asking all these questions in the column, and I'm like, Pete Maverick, who is Pete Maverick? Is that his real name? Then it was, he's part of the Top Gun group, and we just became friends through that. And I go, hey, you need to change your avatar. You need to change your Facebook. Use your real name, dude. And so he did. I mean, greatest guy in the world. Well, we start talking, and all these guys from the original movie, Smegs and Bio, somehow had found the Top Gun fan club page and had joined it. And so from that, we were talking. I go, you know what? Why don't we do a Top Gun day on May 16th? And we'll interview all of these guys. So we got all of those guys in, and we had 5 shows that lasted 6 hours. Yeah. And we had budget about 15-minute break in between to go to the bathroom, eat a quick sandwich. Well, as it turned out, all the problems that arise in a situation like this, you send out links to the show, and Bubba sends it out to all of his friends. Yeah. Hey, here's the link to the podcast. Check it out. No, that was the link like I sent you for StreamYard. Yeah. And all of a sudden, all these faces start showing up in the bottom. I'm going, crap, kick from the studio, kick. I'm kicking them all out.
It's funny.
People are like, hey, wait, boom, gone. But we ended up doing this is long before Maverick came out. And we did an episode on the ribbons for Top Gun and for Maverick.
Yeah.
From the photos that we had. And I'll tell you, we rated you guys. You guys got like an A- on all the ribbons based off of rank this time. Yeah. Based off of rank, based off probable experience. I mean, we had a couple issues with a 2-star admiral, and he's got a Purple Heart. Well, where did he get the Purple Heart from?
Like Yeah.
on a convoy somewhere in Iraq as a staff guy, maybe
Well
got
done.
hit.
If you look at Maverick at the funeral, his are legit for, shooting down 2 MiGs
Yeah.
and all stuff, and a captain, and he's been test pilot. Like those were very specifically. He's really the only one that there was input on after I arrived, and that was. And then the other thing was the jackets. So Tom and I had a thing about the jacket from the first movie. I'm like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, were you in the Marine Corps and the Army and the Navy and the Civil War, and then you were a SWO? Like, I don't understand what's going on here. There's too much shit, and it doesn't make sense. And so I showed him mine, the one you saw that Glenn Powell was wearing.
Yeah.
I'm like, we kind of trend towards NASCAR, right? Where there's a bunch of shit, and it's your resume, it's all the shit you've done, and cruises and limits and whatever. And he goes, yeah, well, they're expecting to see the jacket. So what we agreed on was he does it in the beginning, right? The first thing, and there's a couple little flashes through the movie where he's wearing the jacket. But then I go, yeah, we'll get this other one made up for you. And he wasn't having any of it. He's good with the Nomex because he liked it, but he just wanted the simplicity, which is more like of a Top Gun type feel, where he's got the patch and the flag and his whatever, he's a VX-31 guy and his name tag. So that was fine. But then for the admirals, I go, but those guys would have the full superhero cape NASCAR thing.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, where do we get those? I'm like, I got it. I got this. So I went to wardrobe and I go, I need you to find somebody to go on the internet and buy the naval aviation patches. And they go, which ones? I'm like, all of them. Like every naval aviation patch that's fighter stuff on the entire internet that you can find. So I'm like, I'm going to get 200 patches. This is going to be cool. So the next day in my trailer, there's a knock on the door and there's a dude with a forklift and like this big, what do you call it? A crate thing, like a cruise box. Yeah. And it's got all the patches from the internet, like that you can buy from all the different sites. And it's thousands. And I'm like, oh shit. Okay. I got a new problem. Hey, I need you to go find me 10 production assistants. And they're like the people that the gophers, and they do stuff on the, go get coffee, go find a 20, fluorescent light bulb or whatever. And they just run off and do it because it's their entry level job. So I go, okay, if it has a picture that looks like this airplane, that looks like a Dorito, put it in this pile. If it says a ship, USS anything, put it over here. If it's got a base, put it over here. So they sorted all these things. So I had, and then like there was stuff that was the stupid fake patch crap and was dumb. I'm like, which they thought was the coolest. I'm like, no, those are fake and stupid. So I got all the Tomcat, the Hornet, I got the LSO stuff, the bases, the cruises, and we put them all together. And then I took like Admiral Aquilino, who at the time was Pac Fleet Actual. And then I took, I think it was Bullet Miller, the Air Boss, and a couple other flags. I took, I think it was, might have been Pepper McCoy, whoever was Nautic Actual. And I looked at their bios and I looked at the guy before him and the guy before him. And I'm like, okay, here's the path to being Pac Fleet. Here's a path to this, the path to. And then I started taking these patches and I'm like, okay, so this year, and he would have been flying this airplane, and he would have been this cruise, and there's a JDAM patch. So I got a group of patches per jacket, and I made them for Cyclone and Warlock. And then I took this little like double-sided fabric embroidery tape, something, whatever, from wardrobe, and I stuck them on there in the order. And I'm like, take these, sew them on. So they had, like he's got 1,000, 1,200 traps, and he's got tail hook, and then Cyclone's got Pacific Fleet Adversary, and then he was on the, the Enterprise, and then the whatever. And if you look at those jackets, which you can't because they ended up not being in the movie, but I think John and Charles have those. They kept them. It's like that's what I was waiting for. Is you could look at these jackets and be like, wait, freeze frame. That is everything on there is chronologically correct. Every ship match, every deployment match, every whatever to that's that cool. person in that job. And they were, I mean, it was perfect. I spent a week doing those, and then ended up not wearing the jackets in the movie. So
all that work.
So all I remember for are the fucked up ribbons that I didn't do, but the jackets had so much time on it were perfect. Never saw the light of day.
Oh man, but it'd be worth $1 million on the internet. It's
oh my god, they'd be worth, they wore them, but the scenes got cut for whatever they were. So
that's like Vern. Vern was one of my students, and so I had him for day 6, day 7 on the 737.
Yeah,
and so Vern tells me, he goes, yeah, I just got off active duty, and man, my last big thing was I got to be in Top Gun. You were in Top Gun?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in Top Gun Maverick, the new one that just,
Great stuff.
is waiting for it to come out. And so he's telling me about the motorcycle scene and flying down the runway and the whole 9 yards. But then he goes, "Hey, check this out, Taco." And he has his G suit and all that stuff that Tom Cruise is wearing, and he's kind of touching the airplane.
Yeah.
And he goes, "That was mine."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Dude, where is it?" And he goes, "It's in my garage, in a box or whatever." I'm like, "You need to hold on to that, man. That'll pay for your kid's college one day. Tom Cruise wore my G suit,
If you don't go to jail for selling on eBay.
Yeah, they don't care, man. They waste so much money anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is awesome. What's your favorite memory that you would take away from the production of all that hard work? What is your
People.
favorite?
I met so many great people. The cast was great. They ruined my stereotype of Hollywood. Everybody was very nice and down to earth, and and they were all very respectful of the Navy and what we do. Tom, very busy guy, and doesn't always know what he doesn't know. So there's all this bullshit that came out, especially when we were on the ship, about Tom told a sailor not to look at him, and Tom threw a sailor's phone overboard. And if you pull the thread on those, it's like anti-Tom Cruise websites and people that just don't like him, whatever.
And here's a great picture of him out there just shaking hands with everybody.
Did a photo op on the roof of the ship where the helicopter hovered and took a picture. And there's like 1,000 people. It was the whole crew and the cast and everybody. And then I said, "Hey, at the end, you're going to be standing there next to the admiral and the captain of the ship and the strike group commander and so on. And there's going to be a lot of sailors around you. I think it is well worth your time to stay up there for a few minutes and say hi." And he's like, "Oh yeah, of course, of course." He was up there for about an hour, and it was hot too. I mean, it was winter actually, but it was warm out over off of San Diego on the ship. And that guy stood out there and probably shook 500 hands. He was out there for a long time. And then there were times when, I remember driving into the set one morning. It's really early, not really early. It's probably 6 a.m. But we're driving in Fallon, and it's me and him and he's got an Escalade that he runs around, and he's got a driver and he's got his assistant. So it's like just the four of us in the car, and we're driving in somewhere. And I go, "Hey, the problems that we had with the jet at the end of the day, didn't mess anything up. We got all the shots, but the jets needed maintenance, and there's kids that were working on the jets. Call them kids, but there's young men and women that worked on the jets all night, and they are just finishing up. I would appreciate if you would walk into the maintenance space with me, about 10 of them, just spend a minute. Hey guy, I'll tell you what to say. You don't even have to say anything. Just walk in, read your line. The line is, 'Hey folks, really appreciate you working real hard on the jets all night. It's really doing something great for the Navy, and I thank you for your time.' Turn around, walk out, done, 40 seconds. He walks in there, and he spent about 10 minutes, to the point that the producer, Tommy, was giving me the look the sun's coming up, right? And we gotta make a movie here. And I'm like, "Go tell your boss. I didn't tell him to do this. I told him 60 seconds. And he sat there and he talked to all of them, asked where they were from, shook their hands, took pictures with them, which is a big no-no on the set, right? But they sequestered the photos and gave them to the sailors later. There was a lot of sailor interaction that he was, it annoys me when these people come out who don't know him. And I see a lot of this on the internet, and typically I don't respond, because don't wrestle with a pig, because you both get dirty and the pig likes it.
Sure.
But stuff like, he did this and that, and he was a big jerk, and he's the devil, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes I'll be like, "Oh, I didn't see you there. Where were you?" "Well, no, it was my cousin's third nephew's daughter's dog's roommate that," and I'm like, "Right. So you weren't there. That didn't happen." "Yeah, well, I was told it happened." I'm like, "But it didn't happen, because I was there. I was with him every day on the boat. When he walks out of his room in the morning till we're finishing eating and talking at night, I'm with the guy. And he's not around sailors or anybody else without me being there, because we were joined at the hip. Fallon, Whidbey, anywhere you go, I was with the guy constantly, and none of this ever happened." So that kind of annoys me, that people would just say shit that they know isn't true because they weren't there, and they just want to post something that says that I know this and I'm an expert on X, and usually just ignore it. But sometimes I'm like, "Yeah, that's actually not true." So he was very gracious to a lot of people. And so back to your original question, is my favorite part was the people. I'm very, very good friends with some of the cast members. I'm not unfriendly with the rest of them, but there's a few, Glenn and some of the others that I speak to regularly that are great people. They're all great people, but just very, very, very nice. that have done some favors for charity things for me and for sailors and whatever. But I'm very close with a number of the production people, assistant directors and gaffers and lighting, just people that were
they're like instrumental in making that thing.
What's that?
They were all instrumental in making this.
So can't do that. It's amazing it's like on an aircraft carrier. There's no job that's unimportant or the person wouldn't be there. But you watch people that were on this film, and it's like the Top Gun of filmmakers. I mean, nobody on there was half-assed or lazy or not doing their job or just lucky to be there. Like everybody was hand selected, so granted, it's a very select crew, but everybody's so nice. Some of my best friends right now are people that I worked with on the film, the location manager and the assistant directors and the photographer, like people that the movie's been out for a year. I haven't worked on it in 2 years, and I talk to them weekly just because we have these text threads that, get out of hand and are pretty, you're funny, but that was the best part. But as far as like what single thing happened, like what day was like, oh, that was the best day, was the day before we shot with Ed Harris when we were in China Lake and we did low passes over that building. We did, I'm pretty sure it was 19 of those where there's just people with iPhones at different, there's one right behind me. There's one over here on the side. There's one here. There's one, so we had all these angles and we do a preamble like, okay, Joe, who's the director, we just want to give, here's a menu. You pick what you want tomorrow. And we'd be like, okay, Joe, pass number 1 is, and it was Walleye in Blue Angel number 5 that they turned into the Dark Star later. So, okay, Joe, this is going to be 150 feet at 400 knots. Okay, the next one is going to be 100 feet at 500 knots. Okay, the next one is he's going to pitch up full afterburner, make the dust go everywhere. Okay, the next one is just don't hit me and be as fast as the airplane will go. And there's a couple of those. You'll see them like on my Instagram page. There's that Ferg VFC 13. I posted, I think, all of those preliminary that we chose from. And there's some that are, you look at, like you watch the video and you go, and you duck down. So low, because if you haven't seen that, go check it out. There's some really good.
Check it out. Did it really make the roof on that little building
on its own? We did this 19 times, right, in practice. The next day, there's the magic hour or the perfect hour, whatever they call it in Hollywood, where the sun is exactly, it's all about lighting, right? Claudio Miranda, Academy Award for lighting. He was our lighting guy and our cinematographer. So they're in this truck. So it's truck, me, camera, Ed Harris, runway. And they're in this truck that's got like the plastic tarp over it so that because they know the dust is going to get in there, and they got all their equipment so that they can look at the monitors. And it's getting late in the day. And I go, hey, Joe, he's up overhead holding, and the jet is going back tonight to Pensacola, or in the morning, Pensacola. This was on a Saturday, I think. I go, I need a jet in Pensacola Sunday because it's going back on the air show circuit on Wednesday. So it's their spare, and they can't, it was a favor that the boss of the Blue Angels did for me and for this production, and it's for the Navy, but it's leaving tomorrow. You're not doing this tomorrow. And he goes, well, we're not ready. We're doing this. And we're checking levels and whatever they do. And I go, well, I'm getting close to my 30 minutes before sunset. And there's an ATOPS rule that says that you can't be below whatever it is, 100 or 200 feet. And he's going to be at like 12 feet. So the building was 11 feet. I told him, just don't hit it. And you watching that thing. Maybe he's at 15 feet, but he's pretty damn low.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not going to accept the risk of him being blatantly violating ATOPS, not only below 200, I think it's below 200 feet. Like you can't be below 200 feet or maybe 500. It's been a while since I've done that syllabus in the Hornet. But let's say it's 200 feet and he's, 90% below that. I go, I'm not going to let him do that after sunset, because if something were to happen, not only are we doing crazy shit, but we're violating ATOPS for a movie, and just no. And the answer is no. So I said, you got about 3 minutes, and then I'm going to call him in, and you get what you get. No, we're not ready. We're not ready. So they're giving me this whole, they got to do levels and they got to do checks and blah, 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 blah. And I go, well, Joe, I'm bringing Walleye. So I recommend you call action or roll or whatever you got to do, because it's, the sun's going down and this is it. So I go, Walleye, menu item number 15, bring the heat, A game, execute. He goes ripping through there. And I go, Joe, it's over to you. You're the director. But if you want to film this, man, I would say action or whatever. And he goes, roll, action. So, 10 seconds later, Walleye comes ripping across at the speed of heat. And it lifts the building off, and I watch it in slow motion. I'm like, no, because I think it's going to come because the back end lifts up towards me because the building became a wing. We built that. It was a fake building, and it was per the base CO. He goes, don't build it out of like steel, because if an airplane, it's at the end of the runway. I don't want an airplane hitting and exploding. So build it where, if a 56,000 pound airplane hit it, we'd have no more building, but we could fix the airplane. I'm like, okay. So it was built like wood and sheet metal and whatever, but apparently it's kind of turned into a wing. And so it was good for 19 passes. Past 20, the only one we filmed, that thing comes up and I'm like, I'm going to die. That thing is going to come over and hit me. And it starts to fly a little bit. In the movie, it's really quick, but I'm watching it in time compression, slow motion. I'm like, shit, this is going to suck. I'm going to die in it, not a way that I thought I would. And it's on film too. So it slams back down. The lights come out of it. It had fluorescent lights, and the lights come out and fall on these stuntmen that are dressed like Navy security guys, and it looked fantastic. And then they go cut, and it prints, and I go, "Did you get that?" And he goes, "Yeah, but." Excuse me. He goes, I don't think I can use it. It looks too fake. I'm like, it was real. I almost died. Use it. And we ends up using it. And I go, you need to do it behind the scenes where you talk about destroying the set. And he later does that. There's some piece with Joe Kaczynski where he says, it was all real and we destroyed the set. So I went and I looked at it later, and the lights were real, and the air conditioning, a little camera that moved.
Yeah.
So a generator ran some Romex to the back corner of this building. So I looked at it's, your standard little Romex from Home Depot. Runs up the back side of this and was into the roof. And I'm like $20 worth of cable is what kept me from getting killed. So, I mean,
wow.
On there, it would have taken out, Ed would have been fine, but it would have come over on me and the camera guy and the lighting guy. And we would have been messed up bad. Maybe not killed, but it would have sucked. So
now, was Ed expecting that? I mean, cause he hadn't been there for that.
No, but he
practices, but was he expecting that?
I briefed him, and that guy's such a stud. He was such a cool guy. I briefed him. I'm like, all right, Mr. Harrison. He goes, I'm just Ed. I'm like, okay, Ed. Hey, I did this 19 times yesterday, and I've like been around this with the Blues and some other stuff. So it's kind of not as big a deal for me, but I'll tell you right now, it's going to be loud. You're going to feel the pressure, the concussion of it. Try not to move. It'll be over in a second. And then when they yell cut, like whatever, roll in the fetal position if you want to. He's looking really bored in this interview.
Roll in the fetal.
I'm like, I've done this 19 times, and it was awesome. It was like having a radio-controlled 60,000-pound supersonic toy, and it just kept thumping. You could feel your guts getting rearranged on the inside when the airplane would go by. And he's disinterested, not disrespectfully so, but he's like, yep, all right, okay, got it, yep. And I'm like, you know what? Do whatever feels natural. And then the kid who's the aide comes up to me and goes, hey, sir, well, what should I do? And I go, you should definitely do whatever strikes you at the time. Because I know this kid's going into the ditch. And he did in the movie. The kid was terrified. Ed does not move a freaking muscle. I'm like, we killed Ed. We killed Ed Harris.
He's having a heart attack. He froze.
Dead, standing with a heart attack. I'm like, holy shit. Well, we didn't kill Tom and the jet. We just killed Ed on the set. And he turns around. And he takes his glasses off, and they're smeared all the dust and stuff. And did we get it? I'm like, oh yeah, yeah. The guy was so cool. He was such a cool cat. But yeah, so that was all real. That was amazing. That was.
And Tom was in the back of that F-18.
Yeah, it was just Walleye. Yeah,
Walleye. Is this Walleye?
Let anybody. No, that's Lowe's. Sorry, Yellow. He was the CO of TR when we filmed at sea. He's now an admiral. Walleye is the guy that did that Marine Memorial Club video. I don't know if you've seen that. He was, it might be on my Instagram page, some picture of the Walleye, but he was the Blue Angel that I pulled in to do the really low stuff.
Okay. I'll check him out. Now, here's the most important question. Recruiting numbers went through the roof for Navy and Marine Corps in 1986, including moi. What has the Navy come back after a year of this movie being out? Has the Navy come back with hard metrics on how we did as recruiting across the boards? Because it would have helped everybody, Air Force, Navy.
Oh, of course. I haven't, that's a good question. I need to ask that question. I'll do it before that Top Gun Days event, because I'm sure that'll come up again. I need to ask the question through an appropriate official channel, because I know we track those numbers, and with a year to go, so it would be They may do it they probably do it by fiscal year. So
Yeah.
I don't know if they would have the numbers until this coming October, but because the other one was May through October. But if there was a bump in May to October,
Yeah.
that's measurable for sure. I think the bigger bump would be the fiscal year 23, which has, was it March? 5 months left in it.
Yeah.
But what was funny was one of the senior vice presidents at Paramount called me 10 days after the movie came out. And she goes, "Hey, so how are your numbers?" I'm like, what numbers are you talking about? She's like, "Recruiting." I'm like, it's been a week, right? And she goes, "You're recruiting more people." I'm like, "Yeah, you call me in a year because we don't like, hey, we got 4 more today." So yeah, it was funny that they think that we track, like the government is so efficient that it tracks those numbers on a hourly basis, like a views list on your show or something.
Well, what we do a monthly report because I was on recruiting duty for 9 years. There's a monthly report that goes out that shows the average number and how each guy's doing or whatever. So I figure there has to be matrix out there that will talk about that.
Yeah, I'm sure. I don't know what the needle movement would be, but I will ask that question because that is something that by now, if it ain't moved yet, it ain't gonna move.
Yeah. And now I want to throw this out to all the Top Gun fans out there. Ferg and I are going to be with Michael Sheriff and Frank and Kerry Whiteley and Kurt Grable. All these folks are coming out to San Diego in May. We'll be there May 12th through the 14th, and it's for Top Gun Days. And it's basically, say, a Top Gun seminar. I believe the morning half will be the original movie. The second half will be Maverick centric. And we'll have guest speakers up, which one of them right in front of you, Ferg. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. We're going to have you. We're going to have Vern. We're going to have, oh gosh, what's her name that played the female?
Oh, Bacon.
Yeah, we're going to have her. We've got all sorts of folks that are going to be there. So if you haven't bought your tickets, please do me a favor. Go buy your tickets for the weekend. It's like 200 some bucks, and it's well worth it. Not making any money off of it. It's going into the production, the people, the hotel, the transportation, the whole 9 yards. So it's a love. It's just straight out of love for what this movie's done for us. And really, I don't even know how to say it. It changed my generation, our generation. And I hope that it changes the perspective for a whole new generation to serve, especially to fly off a carrier. God love you guys. I only landed once, and that was my prop appreciation ride when I hit the Lex in the back of that A4. And like an idiot too. Hey, you got your harness locked? And I'm like, yes, sir. I got my harness locked. Got your camera put away because I had a 300 zoom lens. I'm taking pictures. Oh, yes, sir. I got the camera in here. Yep. And I'm looking at that big gyro in the A4. And pieces of ice are hitting me in the face.
Right.
and the student bolters twice, and he goes, "Well, we're going to have to escort him back if he doesn't catch this wire." So we follow the guy downwind. He doesn't even know that we're there, the student. We're right formation with him. Come down the right side of the carrier. He lands and catches a wire, and I'm sitting here like, yes. Yeah. And they go, "Roger, cleared, come back around, Marshall or whatever." We come back, and all I remember was, 2.2 or whatever it was, 2.1, call the ball, Roger ball. And we come in and we land. Well, like an idiot, there's no sensation of speed until you're actually over the deck. And I know you guys are a little bit too busy looking at where you're going to place it to notice out of your peripheral, I'm sure. But like an idiot, I'm like, la, 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 and I'm looking over my left. And still to this day, I can't turn my neck to the left because I was looking over like this. And it goes, whack! And, 130 miles an hour to nothing. And I whipped my neck. By the time we got back to Kingsville, I'm drinking beer with everybody. And they're like, "How was it?" And I'm like, "Oh, it was awesome. Oh, yeah, it was great." I had whiplash for 3 weeks after that. I'm flying to King Air. I've got to get winged. I can't call in sick for any of this. And I'm like, left 180.
It goes in your service record.
Locked.
Make sure it goes in your service record.
Oh, I should have. Nah, I never went to medical. But yeah, that was a great time. So listen, man, I can't thank you enough for spending all this afternoon with me. And I look forward to seeing you in May. Spread it. We'll put this out on video and throw it on Tall Tales with Taco. I can't thank you again, Ferg, for joining me, brother.
My thanks to you for taking the time, and I just want to shout out to we talk about the movie and the various movies and all the stuff that that got us motivated, but it really is not about movies and actors and box office and stuff. It's about the men and women, the sailors, the chiefs, the officers that are downrange right now doing God's work. So shout out to them, the people that are doing the really hard work, the listening, and the families that have an even harder job at home waiting for their loved ones to come home.
Yeah, damn Skippy. I don't know about you, but when I do my PA, I do it from the front.
Yeah, me too.
And I always tell the folks, I go, hey, look, here's the deal. The flight attendants, I go, watch. When I do my PA, see who raises their hands, because if you ever have an incident in the back of the airplane, that's your go-to guy. Go beat the snot out of somebody for you, right? Yeah. So I'm like, hey, folks, blah, 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 great airplane, awesome crew, take you to wherever we're going today, da-da-da-da-da. Hey, as a retired Marine, I just always have to ask, do I have any Marines on board?
Yeah.
If nobody raises a hand, then I throw in, free drinks for any Marines on my airplane. All of a sudden, the hands come up, right? And I go, I busted you, Army, you're Air Force. I got you guys.
That's
then
funny.
I go, no. In all seriousness, how many, we don't have any Marines, or maybe we do. How many Air Force? Raise your hands. You get a couple. How many Army? Raise your hands. All right. Navy. All right. Here's a golden lotto ticket. How many Coast Guard? Because they're like pink unicorns. You never see them until you need them. Raise your hand. And one or two I'll get sometimes. And I'm like, dude, I'm buying a lotto ticket as soon as I get back because I got you on my airplane. You guys are like rubbing lucky numbers, And then I go, okay, how about spouses that took care of us when we're deployed? And here's the final big one. Veterans from Vietnam, like my dad who served 2 years in Vietnam. Do I have any Vietnam veterans on board? And they raise their hands. I go, big welcome home. You guys never got the welcome home you deserve. Listen, round of applause for everybody. You guys are the fabric of freedom, makes this a great country. And people, and they'll go nuts. I love it. And
military pitch, but yours is better, so I might steal some of that.
Steal all you want, man. But that's what I tell them. In the flight attendants are like, well, I never thought about that. Yeah, if I have a problem, who am I going to go get? I'm going to go get that guy Ferg, sitting there, raise his hand.
Well, I was just doing it for the drinks.
Well, we don't have any drinks anymore. Do they? I think in first class, maybe.
Well, we'll have some in May. How about that?
Damn Skippy, man. Well, listen, brother, I look forward to it. And I will share this with Michael Sheriff, and big shout out to him, of course, and Frank and Kirk, who's putting together this awesome program that we have in May. So we will see you then. Have a good one. Tell your wife thanks again for letting me borrow you, and I will catch you up with you then.
You bet. Thanks,
Hold on 1 second. I'm going to say goodbye. I got something for you. Hold on a second.
All right.
Hey, folks, thanks so much for joining us. Listen, and like I said before, if you have a chance to be in San Diego, May 12th through the 14th, come on out and join us. We have so many of the original behind-the-scenes folks that tell these stories that are phenomenal. You can get stuff on podcasts, but to actually be in person, somebody says something, it may spark a memory that they didn't tell on a podcast or a story that they've never shared before. So it's a really neat way to dive into what is basically one of my favorite movies, Top Gun. And of course, now Top Gun Maverick. Fantastic job. I can't thank Ferg enough. I will see you guys next Tuesday. Adios, hasta luego, auf Wiedersehen. Tschüss, shesheni, au revoir, domo arigato gozaimasu, tam no shinde kudasai, ciao, arrivederci.